Hello everyone, this is El Spectrum. Welcome back to the Land of Empires. And today, I want to bring everyone episode 7 of my Apex Arena review series. And I think for my review series from now on, I plan to record 2 episodes every new season. The first episode will kind of cover my first impressions, and we'll take a look together at what people are running, the composition variations that people are using against their opponents, and how they all perform. Now, after we get a better understanding of how the new season heroes perform overall, I plan to record a second episode where I dive deeper into the mechanics and really cover what works and what does not work in that season. So it's been about 2 months since we entered season 8. So this is no longer really a first impressions video. And I will make this kind of a review of what people are running. And I have, I guess, 8 matchups that I want to share with everyone today, starting in Warzone 1 with General versus JFK. So let's get started. We can see that the first composition, JFK, is running a fairly standard Season 6 composition across both Team 1 and Team 2, actually. While General is running kind of a suppressive composition with the Chitaurian Season 6 Cavalry Armor on Lubu. Now, this composition is fairly good against many Season 8 compositions. But similar to the case where you do not equip any armor on Lubu, where you just run Lubu by himself, together with Neptunarch equipped with Kellerman's armor, this composition is actually fairly weak to Season 6. So I can see what JFK is doing in the first 2 teams. He is trying to run Season 6 against this composition who is weak to Season 6. And interestingly enough, General actually ran quite a few archers. Now, one way you can prevent your team from falling to a non-main team from the enemy is to run more archers. The archer in Season 8 will typically die first, and once it dies, it actually results in the rest of your team dying, because the archer, somehow, I don't know how, it is very good at suppressing the damage your opposing team is able to deal to your infantry. Similar to how the Season 7 Cavalry works back in Season 7. Dorothy is very capable of making your infantry super tanky, and this appears to be the case for the Season 8 Archer as well. Once your Season 8 Archer dies, your team becomes very vulnerable if you are put up against the opposing side's Season 8 teams. So JFK in his first 2 teams attempted to kill the Archer of General, and he actually succeeded. He was able to kill the archer, and as a result of that, this team becomes very weak. So let's take a look at the third fight. So the third fight, we can see that the general actually did not have any infantry remaining either. So this was quite a dominating win for JFK. And the way I would go against Season 8, once your main team is dead, it's actually quite difficult. Season 8 is very resistant against most compositions that do not involve Season 8 Cavalry or Season 8 Archer. So General is kind of out of luck here. Once his main team died, he did not really have a way to eliminate JFK's full Season 8 team. So we can see here, General is running the Season 8 Infantry. So the Season 8 Infantry, he is particularly good at defense. However, he does not deal very much damage. So if you are running this kind of team, you need some kind of damage dealer. And these are not particularly good damage dealers. So this team could not really stand up against a full Season 8 team. And his next team is just very bad. I don't even have to look at the report, but I can tell you right now, even with General's incredible stats, this team is going to do almost no damage against a full Season 8 team. So let's take a look. And yeah, this is quite expected. We can actually take a look at the replay. And what happens is that Leona, although she is able to do incredible damage back in Season 7, what happens is that the opposing, General's already almost dead. There's really not much to talk about. So what happens is that the opposing Lu Bu just crushes Leona because Leona has no way to kind of suppress the cavalry damage. And the cavalry deals a lot of damage due to his awakening skill. And Leona is just not very effective in that composition. She's not very effective versus Season 8. So congratulations to JFK. The next fight I want to review is Young OG versus Joe Zero. Both very strong players. In the first team, Young OG ran a very standard, kind of a soft full Season 8 counter. So this composition is fairly good against someone who is running a pure Season 8 team. However, this composition, like I mentioned earlier, is very vulnerable to the Season 6 Cavalry. So we can see that Joe Zero ran Season 6 Cavalry in his first composition, combined with the Season 8 Infantry Hero. So this is a quite effective composition against many different compositions that does not include like a full Season 8 team. However, personally, I feel that this composition against what Young OG is running is actually slightly inferior to a Season 6 team. However, a Season 6 team is actually vulnerable to many other Season 6 and Season 7 variations. So what Joe Zero here is running is actually fairly safe. Fairly safe against non-Season 8. And we can see the incredible damage that the cavalry is able to deal to this team. If we take a look at the report, most of the damage is contributed by the cavalry, and actually a surprising amount is contributed by the archer. So you might ask, why is Leona able to deal damage in this case? I think part of it could be due to you running Khufu. What Khufu does is that Khufu suppresses the damage that your opposing sides is able to deal. And Dorothy, I think, actually Dorothy does not confer any protection. So I think it is a combination of protection from Khufu and the fact that Dorothy, with Quinn's armor, is able to kill Lu Bu relatively quickly. So let's take a look at this replay. So I'm going to speed it up. And I kind of want to see how much damage Leona takes from Lu Bu's first jab. In the previous fight, we saw how Leona died very quickly. So only 8,000 damage. That is not very high. And now it is time for the cavalry to unleash their ultimate. And the ultimate just deals so much damage, which I don't really understand. Because in theory, the archer is supposedly able to suppress the cavalry damage. However, it actually doesn't happen. The archer only suppresses infantry. But if you look at the skill description, I'm just going to move out of this interface for a second. If you look at the skill description of the archer, the rage skill, additionally reduces the damage of the target's rage skill by 50% for 12 seconds. So from that report, we can almost conclude that this does not affect cavalry because the cavalry just dealt so much damage. It almost completely wiped out Young OG's team. And so does that mean that this only suppresses the damage of the infantry? But if this is the case, then what is making so much of an impact to have the archer on the team? So his second skill, reduce your damage taken from rage skill by 80%. This is only affecting the archer. Like, unless they messed up their programming, this skill, based on the description, is only supposed to confer protection for the archer unit. The rage skill caused by the enemy cavalry and archer troop is reduced by 80%. Like, when the cavalry unleashes their rage skill, has it been 15 seconds already? I'm not too sure. Because I think the cavalry is able to unleash their rage skill way before 15 seconds. But the moment they unleash their rage skill, the whole team melts. So this comes back to how difficult it's become to theory craft based only on the skill descriptions. The skill, whether it's the skill interactions or something attributed to bad programming, it's just become so difficult to interpret why some things are working and why some compositions are not working. But I mean, this is kind of the point of this video. Based on a lot of trial and error, we figure out roughly what works and what do not work. And this video really is to review those compositions. So moving on to the next composition of Joe Zero, he is running, he is running this. I feel like this composition would take a decent amount of damage from the cavalry here, depending on how many cavalry stayed alive, which isn't really much. So I guess he wasn't able to deal too much. Yeah. But the next composition, we can see a fairly standard Season 6 composition was able to absolutely annihilate what Joe Zero is running. So this is kind of the opposite of the Team 1 scenario where Joe Zero annihilated Young OG's Season 18. And this is really why I don't really like running this composition. I just feel that it is way too vulnerable to Season 6. If you are going to run this composition, please put it in Team 2 and not in Team 1 or Team 3, because otherwise it is just way too easy to counter. Next, we have Maximus versus Frosty. Team 1, Maximus ran Season 8 Infantry, Season 7 Cavalry, and Season 7 Archer, while Frosty ran the same composition in terms of infantry, but with Season 6 Arma for both Cavalry and Archer. And this is quite interesting that Frosty lost quite convincingly to Maximus, I believe. So Maximus, I know he is slightly stronger than Frosty, but Frosty is quite a strong player as well. So this is fairly convincing to me that Season 8 Infantry combined with Season 7 is superior to Frosty's composition. So let's take a look at how much damage each side was able to deal. So Maximus actually ran very, very heavy Archer on his hybrid composition compared to Frosty, who ran mostly infantry and cavalry, and this is very standard. If you are going to run the Season 6 Archer, you typically do not want to run too many, because the Season 6 Archer, his rage skill is completely protective and he really doesn't deal too much damage. But we can see that Leona was very effective at suppressing the composition that Frosty ran. So if this composition is not in the spreadsheet, I'll actually add it after I record this video. The next composition is the remaining 2 heroes from Maximus against a fairly standard Season 7 composition from Frosty. So this composition was very popular back in Season 7 to counter actually the strongest Season 7 composition, which is Neptunarch with Michael's Arma together with Dorothy and Leona. So that was the most popular and overall strongest Season 7 composition, who was only countered by this particular composition. We call it 547, just to indicate the season that the hero or their respective armas come from. However, this team was completely crushed by simply the infantry hero and Leona. And what this tells me is that Leona does not need Morgan's support when she is combined with Khufu. I think that's his name. The Season 8 infantry hero. And I think this is just so interesting because typically you would want to run Morgan with Leona, because Morgan is able to assist how quickly Leona can use her ultimate skill. But it does appear that Khufu gives Leona enough protection as well as protection for himself that Morgan support doesn't really matter. So let's actually take a look at this confrontation. So what I'm mostly looking for, first of all, is how fast Morgan dies. If he dies too quickly, then of course that will kind of affect Frosty's damage output. And second of all, I really want to see whether Frosty's Leona takes damage before the infantry dies. So let's take a look. And we can already see that infantry receive incredible damage. The cavalry hero actually died at relatively the same time as the infantry hero, and that is very, very surprising. I did not expect that fight to end so quickly, to be honest. Like, I know Maximus is very strong, But Frosty, I mean, he alone has tier 12.5 infantry as well as tier 12.5 cavalry. So he is nothing to be brushed off. This team 3, because the cavalry wasn't there and he didn't really have any infantry left either, this was just a steamroll. And now we reach team 4. And of course, Maximus's team 4 is geared to somewhat counter Frosty's team 4 by using the season 6 cavalry armor. So this was a win for Maximus. Congratulations to him. And we will review Blitz versus Jack Sparrow next. So let's see what they have to offer. So Jack Sparrow ran the exact same composition as Maximus, I believe, versus a season 6 team from Blitz. Now the issue with season 6 is that it is primarily geared towards countering some season 8 compositions. And this is what I meant by the season 16 being particularly vulnerable if your opponent isn't really running the right composition that your season 6 team counters. So here, Jack Sparrow ran the season 8 infantry hero combined with season 7 cavalry and archer. And that, we can see, it completely wiped out the season 6 team from Blitz. Now, season 6 really is not magically powerful. It did not become powerful in season 8. It is just rather effective at countering Lu Bu combined with Neptunarch running Kellerman's armor for whatever reason that I have no idea. But it is still a very weak team relative to season 7 and the correct season 8 composition. So we can see this was very one-sided. Moving on to the next team, we have Blitz running. Actually, Blitz is running what Frosty was running before. And this was actually a timeout. Very, very surprising. Was this what Frosty ran? Yes, that was exactly what Frosty ran, actually. So this is really, it really contrasts with what Maximus was able to achieve. And my best guess, based on the outcome of this fight, is that Jack Sparrow's Leona was able to deal tremendous damage, but his Leona, because he ran so few archer, got kind of suppressed by the opposing Dorothy with Quinn armor. So I think what happened is that Leona died too quickly and was no longer able to deal the damage that she is able to deal in this matchup. So let's take a look. So it does appear that if you want to run the composition that Maximus is running, you would want to use a decent amount of archers. Okay, now the archer from Blitz has died. And we see that Leona is actually not doing that much damage. Yeah, contrary to my expectations, she actually did not deal that much damage. So it looks like my intuition was incorrect. So let's take a look at the result of Frosty versus Maximus. So we can see that Maximus run a lot of archers. A lot of archers. So now I'm really curious how this turned out. So not much is happening right now. And the infantry got hit pretty hard. Let's see if we could slow this down. So the moment the archer unleashes their ultimate, or I don't even know where those damage numbers are coming from. Okay, so the moment the archer unleashes the ultimate, the infantry takes a decent amount of damage. And the moment the arrow like is unleashed, the infantry takes another chunk of damage. I really don't know. It's very confusing. But it does appear that if you want to run this composition, the Season 8 infantry and Season 7 cavalry and archer, you would want to run a decent number of archers. Yes. And following that, Blitz ran... okay. It got destroyed. It's like, you really don't want to run this composition. It gets destroyed so easily by Season 6. Like, how did this even happen? It's just so dumb. Like, stat-wise, you can see how inferior Jack Sparrow's stats are in this team compared to Blitz. And Blitz got completely wrecked. Like, the moment Tutorian unleashes his ultimate, it's game over for this team. Like, what in the language of skill descriptions allows this to happen? I do not understand. Just take a look at this. Blitz is suffering from absolutely zero damage, while Jack Sparrow's infantry... What just happened? What just happened? How did Blitz Archer die? Did he use like one archer or something? How many archers did he run? 20,000. It's like, I think what happens is that the 58,000 troops of Tutorian took a jab at the archer. So you can see these notifications. I think you will see notifications on the right. So unrivaled here or something. Come on, where's Tutorian? Storm of arrows. Assault the back row. Oh, okay. Apparently it was Kellerman equipped with frost armor that killed the archer. How? I don't know. That skill is not supposed to deal that much damage to the Season 8 archer, I can tell you that. And we can see that the moment Tutorian unleashed his ultimate... Wait. Was that the second cast? That was the first ultimate, right? No. Bring this back. I gotta see that again. Was that the first ultimate or the second ultimate? Okay, the archer uses his ultimate. Okay, I think that was the first ultimate, right? Okay, so that first wave of damage was from Kellerman. And that was the first ultimate. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how Kellerman is able to do such tremendous damage to Lubu and... I mean, Kellerman with frost armor. Just call him Frost. I don't know how Frost is able to do such tremendous damage to Lubu and Neptunarch running Kellerman armor. I guess it's just simply from the lack of protection. And in fact, what happened maybe is that if you recall, the Archer hero, the Season 6 Archer hero, he actually lowers your team's damage in the first 15 seconds. And because Jack Sparrow did not have the Archer, his damage was not lowered the first 15 seconds of the battle. So Kellerman actually dealt a lot of damage to the Archer. But if you keep in mind, the Archer... So it is not from his awakening skill. It is actually from the passive skill. One of the damaging passive skills of the Season 6 of the Season 6 infantry. But the issue with that, first of all, his stats are complete dog shit compared to Blitz. And second of all, this skill does not deal that much damage. It deals 300% damage every 3 seconds until the end of the battle. So this is what probably killed the Archer somehow. And dealt like 20,000 damage to the infantry and cavalry. I don't know. Like, skill interactions are just out of this world nowadays. I don't know what's going on. So let's move on to Warzone 5. Like, I don't even know if this is supposed to be a first impression review of Apex Arena or an actual discussion. I guess this is kind of more like a discussion than a first impressions video, because even now we are still learning about the meta, and right now we are in the midst of the battle disorder. And I think that it is a good chance to really record all the composition variations as well as their counters within the battle disorder. Because although they share some similarities with combat outside the battle disorder, it has a lot of uniqueness and its own quirks. So moving on to Warzone 5, let's see what is up here. Washablipegasus, sorry if I butchered your name, versus Tarkus. We have a fairly standard composition versus, this is not really a team. And his team 2 is not really a team either. Why would you equip? Yeah, that is very weird. But it is a good showcase of how resilient this variation is against non-Season 8. It is just overall very good, and I really appreciate this composition. But we can see in the third fight, this team got kind of crushed by full Season 8. Full Season 8 is very strong, and this team, we can see it is not good at all versus full Season 8. And we can also see how good full Season 8 is versus Season 6. It almost took no damage. You cannot... It's just very hard to counter a full Season 8 team without running the Season 8 Archer as well as Season 8 Cavalry. And his last team is actually quite decent against full Season 8. And thankfully, he was able to come out with a win. So congratulations to Washa. The next fight I want to review is from Warzone 6. To the right, we have Izzy versus Skun. He reminds me of that pufferfish meme from the guy feeding the the pufferfish a carrot. But let's take a look at what compositions they are running. So this is what Frosty was... No, this is not what Frosty was running. So this is kind of a variation of what Maximus was running, where you equip the Season 6 armor on Dorothy versus what Frosty was running, technically. This is very weird. Why would you want to equip... maybe he didn't have Awakened Season 5 Archer, but at this point, you should have Awakened Season 5 Archer. So, based on this report, we can see that Awakened Khufu really isn't a big deal. His Awakening skill is just very bad. It's very good on paper, but because Khufu himself does not do a lot of damage, his Awakening skill, which buffs his damage, isn't very impactful. So in the first fight, we can see that Izzy came out victorious, and this is attributed to Leona. So yeah, we can say with fairly strong certainty that Khufu combined with Dorothy, regardless of armor or no armor, combined with Leona is a very proper composition, very solid. In the second composition, in the second matchup, he kind of lost to this composition, which should be very vulnerable to Season 6. So let's see how much damage he took. He actually did not take much damage. Let's take a look at the result. That is interesting. Could it be because his cavalry died before he was able to use the ultimate? That's the only conclusion I can pull out of that. Maybe his infantry count was just a bit too low at this point. Do note that he already lost maybe 90,000 troops. So if his infantry was... that is what happened. I think his infantry just died a bit too fast, because if your infantry does not die, if they are able to survive, then they should be able to deal a decent amount of damage to this team. So do we actually have an example where they used Leona rather than the Season 6 hero against that team? I don't think we've seen that yet. So someone running 488 We don't have that example here, nor do we have it here. Which kind of brings the question, if we haven't seen that composition being run, is this composition actually weak towards this team? Because the infantry just dies so quickly. Like, this is why it doesn't make sense either. Because if we look at the skills, if we look at the Season 6 Cavalry skill, what does the Season 6 Cavalry skill say? This skill, for the first 15 seconds after the battle starts, your cavalry and infantry troop will take 90% less damage. So where in the world is this reflected in that outcome? Take a look at how fast the infantry dies. I just don't get it. Like, what is causing the Season 6 Cavalry skill passive to not work at all? So, okay, at the beginning, so this is like at the very beginning, look at how much damage he's taking. And I don't know. Let's take a look at the damage dealt. It's all from Lu Bu. It's like, did they design Lu Bu so that it is capable of completely ignoring some things in certain compositions? I don't know. I feel like it's causing the infantry to take 90% more damage instead of taking 90% less damage. The next fight I want to review is Juggernaut versus Crypto Shrimp. So this first composition, he is running the Myco variation on Neptune Arc together with Season 6 Archer and Cavalry against a bunch of setups that Crypto Shrimp is running. So now we have kind of a variation of what the previous guy was running, Leona now. And it is actually able to deal a decent amount of damage to whatever Juggernaut is running. Now, this plays in contrast to the previous composition we saw, where they absolutely got crushed. So let's take a look at this fight, and let's see how quickly the infantry dies. So in the previous fight, we saw how much damage the infantry took. He took significant damage. And this composition isn't particularly different at all. Okay, so he's taking a decent amount of damage. At least it's consistent. Now what happens? Is the cavalry going to use his rage skill? Okay, so he's not dead yet. Oh, okay, he's about to die. Okay, the cavalry is able to use his rage skill. And not much else happens. The archer is kind of lucky to survive. But at least it's kind of consistent. I can respect that. But I just really don't understand why we have Dorothy with Chitorian's armor. So Chitorian, I mean, it's like, we're not even factoring the fact that Dorothy's awakening skill inherently reduces the ally melee damage taken by 20% in the first 15 seconds and 40% after the first 15 seconds. Like, you have so much damage suppression, but it is just 0 in the face of Lu Bu. It's just ridiculous. So anyways, we have fight number 7, which I want to review. We have Raon against Prophet. We have the Quinn variation. Let's see if we are able to observe its performance against this composition. So once again, we can see how effective the combination of the Season 8 infantry together with Leona and either Chitorian or Dorothy is against a lot of other variations. In this first fight, interestingly enough, Raon won fairly convincingly. Let's take a look at the damages. Right. What? So this is kind of different from what I figured in the previous few fights. Like, this is how confusing the meta has kind of become. I originally intended this to be kind of a review and discussion, but as I'm looking through more and more these fights, I get the feeling that this is becoming more of a first impressions video than anything. So we have like, this is where I feel that the 90% damage down skill from Chitaurian is working. And because he is conferring a 90% damage down for the first 15 seconds, this composition isn't able to really deal with that. So I think what this means overall is that what Raon is running in Team 1 is the best variation of this composition. Against a mirror setup where you have Dorothy instead of Dorothy equipped with Quinn armor, it wins fairly convincingly. Versus a lot of other setups, including Season 6 and Season 7, or combinations of the two, this composition wins fairly significantly. Fairly convincingly. Against 547, this composition prevails. It's only rather weak against, I guess, Season 8? Like, full Season 8? Like, this doesn't even look that bad. It looks pretty good to me. So yeah, if you're going to run this composition, which is quite good, of course, it is nowhere as good as full Season 8 or some Season 8 variations, but if you need a Team 2, I would suggest this as your Team 2, based on what we can observe from our Apex Arena, quote-unquote, first impressions. The last fight I want to review is Catzilla versus Killer Bunny. So Killer Bunny attempted to run Chitaurian versus this very vulnerable composition. And because of how strong Catzilla is, he was able to sort of brush off this almost hard counter and survive with his infantry and archer. And I was kind of surprised that Killer Bunny decided to run a mirror setup for his Team 2. I think that if he ran some variation of this, say for example, Neptunarch with Michael's armor and Lubu with Quinn's armor, he doesn't need to equip Quinn armor. He doesn't need to equip Chitaurian's armor on Chitaurian. It is just kind of dumb. So if he ran Chitaurian's armor on Lubu, I think he would have won versus Catzilla fairly easily. So he would have been able to completely crush this composition, because this composition is just very weak against, well, not against what Killer Bunny is running, but rather if he ran the Season 6 armor. And he would have been able to completely suppress this composition as well, because this composition is just rather bad versus the Season 8 archer combined with Season 8 Lubu. As we saw, Lubu, I don't know how, completely brushes off the defensive power of Khufu. Yeah, I don't know how. Season 8 is just confusing. Arguably even more confusing than Season 7. I hope this won't become a pattern in future seasons, but I hope everyone enjoyed my review of the Apex Arena for Season 8. I might record another episode, so this will be a second episode of my coverage of Season 8 if we end up learning a bunch of new variations. But you can already see how complicated the dynamics are for Season 8. And I really hope in the future that it won't become even more complicated. Like, if we could theory craft, things would become so much easier. But based on just my observations, it's almost impossible to theory craft after Season 6. Skill interactions are just completely wild. I don't know how they work. Sometimes you just win by a landslide. Other times you lose for absolutely no reason. So I'll see everyone in my next video. Take care.